Beautiful. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Happy Sunday. Julie and I had the privilege yesterday of going to a beautiful wedding ceremony, and it was down in San Marcos. I just was thinking about that, and thinking about our subject that we've been talking about over the last several weeks with the Season for Nonviolence. And the study that we're doing is of this wonderful book called The Bond by Lynn McTaggart, and it's the subtitle, current subtitle is Fixing Your Falling Down World, which I like. It's a good subtitle. But the older subtitle also is one that really speaks to me, and it's called Connecting Through the Space Between Us. Connecting through the space between us. And that really speaks to me in a lot of different ways. And as I was thinking about my lesson for today, and I was kind of inspired in the wedding ceremony that I got to officiate in. And I came across a wonderful story about a couple that was celebrating their 50th anniversary. And this person was interviewing them and asking them, how is it they, what was the secret? How did they manage to, stay together for so long? And how did they manage to stay, seemed to be very happy and very peaceful with each other. And the husband said, well, I've tried never to be selfish. And he says, after all, there's no I in marriage. And the interviewer kind of puzzled a minute and looked at and started to say something. And the wife said, and for my part, I've learned never to correct my husband's spelling. Probably a good idea, I would suggest. Well, and one of the things that I am, I guess I've really been driven and pulled and called in so many ways in my life is to really help be a part of bringing about and establishing peace. Establishing peace in my life. See, I'm a middle child. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that idea, that understanding, but middle children, that's what we do. We're basically peacemakers. And I realize that I have fallen into that role very, very significantly in lots of ways in my life. I never really liked it when I was growing up and the squabbling was going on. Now, don't get me wrong, I had my own part in that, but a big part of what I remember doing as I was growing up was I was the one who was always trying to get everybody to stop fussing and fighting and arguing. I wanted peace, and I was trying to help establish that. So I realized in some ways that's a part of my growing up and part of my nature and part of where I fit into the family structure and that sort of thing. And so it's been a part of my thinking for many years, and yet many times I realized that I was not very peaceful at trying to establish peace at times. And sometimes I was trying to establish peace in ways that were unproductive and probably were just as much at fault in creating problems and difficulties as I was trying to establish peace with others. But there's always been this call within me to try and help myself and others to really come from and live and move back into a place of peace. Well, one of the things you've often heard me say, and one of my good friends and a good teacher many times always said to me and reminded me of the young novice going to the master saying, how is it that you're always so centered? And the master said, well, never centered, always returning to center. And so it really occurs to me that peace is ultimately a process. It's an ongoing process, and it's one that we need to continually practice and move back into that place within us. And in Unity, we talk about ways that we do that, and one of the most significant and important ways that we do that is, we call it meditation, but in Unity we call it in the silence, being in the silence and sitting in the silence. And it's a very powerful understanding that we have that it is what is one of the most significant things that we can do to bring about not only peace in our own lives, but also to bring about peace in our world. In Isaiah chapter 11, verse 6 through 8, it says, the wolf shall dwell with the lamb, and the leopard shall lie down with the kid, and the calf and the young lion and the ox shall feed together. And a little child shall lead them, and the cow and the bear shall feed together, and their young ones shall grow up together. And the lion shall eat straw like the ox, and the suckling child shall play with the serpent. And the weaned child shall put his hand into the hole of the asp. And I'm thinking about this, and I'm thinking, wow, I'm not sure that I would do that. And yet, at the same time, what is being described here is that ultimately, what is being called, what is being predicted, what is being, I think, really projected, really, in many ways, into our world is that ultimately there is a peace and a safety that we all can tap into, that we all can learn from, that we all can grow from. Well, one of the things that Lynn points out is that we have a tendency, and it's a very innate tendency within us, and research really bears this out in many ways, that we have a tendency to be drawn to those that are like us. And it is actually one of the things that does help bring us together, but at the same time, it's one of the things that also separates us. And so in many ways, our work in really learning how to move more into a place of peace and connection and community is not just learning to be a part of those that are like us, but in many ways, learning how to be connected to those that are not like us. It's one of our biggest challenges, I think, but it's also one of our biggest opportunities to really express this understanding that we have in unity that really is that we are truly one. We truly are one. Not always easy in an election season, is it? Have you noticed how you tend to get triggered by them and the others? I know, I confess, I get really caught up in it. And I realize that oftentimes by doing that, I'm actually a part of the problem. That doesn't mean that you don't make decisions and choices. I encourage you to make certainly decisions and choices and use the wisdom that Spirit gives us to make those decisions and choices. But I think it's important for us to begin to do that in ways that does not demonize those that we disagree with. In many ways, it's easy to get triggered and to fall into the patterns of fear of those things that we disagree with. And the very energy that we're putting out, I believe, is one of the things that is more likely to draw to us those very things that we are fearful of. And so part of our shifting in this understanding is to begin to recognize and begin to look beyond the differences. To look beyond the differences that we have with those in other countries, perhaps, or even for that matter, those in other planets, perhaps. I don't know. We need to expand our understanding and our awareness of what's possible and who and what we are in this wonderful, amazing universe that we live in. A lot of our individual relationships have a lot to do with how we see not just the universe, but really how we see ourselves. And how we see the rest of the world, and how we see our place in that. Typically, we do tend to hang out and go to and participate and play and do all kinds of activities, mostly with the people that we're like. And that's one of the things that actually I believe does draw us into unity, is that we have a way of looking at seeing things in unity that we sometimes don't experience in other circles. Wouldn't you agree? And that's a valuable thing. I'm not saying that we should get rid of that. But a part of that really has to do with, are we really using that as a way of separating ourselves from others? Or are we using it as a way of including and connecting ourselves with others? I love this wonderful spiritual community, but if we are really isolating ourselves here and saying, well, we're only going to have people who are like us here, then are we not limiting not only what we believe to be the truth and to believe to be unity? If we're not really inviting and accepting and bringing in those who have different ways of seeing and understanding, it doesn't mean that we don't hold to our understanding and awareness, but we can also do that with and not necessarily have to give that up, but still allow others into our circles, into our way of connecting and relating in life. In Romans chapter 12, verse 4 and 6 through 6, it says, as one physical body, we have many parts, and all of these parts do not have the same function or use. So we, numerous as we are one body in Christ, and individually we are parts of one another. What's being presented here by Paul and Christ is really that essence of our divine nature. We are truly one in our divine nature. We're truly one in spirit. And the more we can practice looking beyond the differences that we see out here in the world and begin to look from that perspective of an understanding that even with those that we have differences with, we're one. We are one. And there's a place where we can come together, even though we see things from different perceptions and different perspectives. I'm always reminded of the 6 blind men and the elephant. Whenever we see these, we're so busy trying to defend our way of seeing things and trying to defend our understanding and our definition of the world that we forget that we're simply only seeing a portion of it. And truly to begin to recognize that there is a vision and a possibility of seeing life from a grander, a larger perspective. The 6 blind men and the elephant, I know you've heard me say it, many of you again, but there were 6 blind men who went to see the elephant, and one of them grabbed hold of the ear and said, well, an elephant is like a giant leaf. And one touched the side of the elephant and said, well, no, an elephant's like a wall. Another one looked at the elephant and touched the trunk and said, no, you're wrong. An elephant's like a giant vine. Another one touched the tail and said, no, it's like a snake. It's like a snake. Another one touched the leg of the elephant. No, it's like a tree trunk. And they're all right. And they're all wrong. Is that true? And so it's important for us to recognize that there are going to be those who are seeing life from a perspective that does not necessarily match our view of life. And part of our work is not to try necessarily to get them to accept our view, but for all of us to raise our awareness to a level where we're seeing much more of the elephant, where we're experiencing much more of life, much more of the universe. I came across an interesting little quote about, it said, how often we say light is air, but you see, there's nothing lightweight about our atmosphere. Do you realize that? Our atmosphere, which weighs 50,000 trillion tons. Without thinking, we often speak of an empty sky, but the sky is never empty. In a mere ounce of air, there are 1,000 billion trillion gyrating atoms of such stuff as oxygen, nitrogen, and hydrogen, and a menagerie of electrons, quarks, and ghostly neutrinos, not to mention cedar. I added that piece. We all seem like we know about that one for some reason. It's only because we're not aware of it most of the time because it's invisible to us and we're not seeing it. And yet we see and we think about this atmosphere that we are in, and our thinking is that we are somehow, it's in a way it's a shift to recognize that we are living in an ocean. Think about that. We are actually living in an ocean of air. And if you think about that for a moment, it's a powerful shift in awareness. But I'm going to suggest to you that that's not correct. We don't live in an ocean. We are the ocean. We don't live on the earth. We are the earth. We don't live in the earth. We are the earth. And I'm going to suggest to you, let's take this another level and recognize that we don't live in community. We are community. We don't live in the world. We are the world. Great song. We should write a song about that. We are the world. In a very literal sense, everything that is in this world and everything that's in this universe is also in us, and vice versa. We are in everything. And that is really what the quantum physics is pointing out, that that a cell that existed in the body of Jesus Christ is in every one of us. But also a cell that was in the body of Adolf Hitler is in every one of us. A cell that was in Mother Teresa is in every one of us. We are all a part of a subsystem and a system of a living organism, a superorganism, you might say, that is the oneness of all. And if we really just simply see ourselves simply as individuals, we are only seeing a very, very tiny little piece of the elephant. And we're believing that that is the elephant. Can you see? And so it's so significant and important for us to begin to expand our understanding and awareness beyond this belief system that I am me. Right now, we all think that thought, don't we? That I am me. And I'm going to suggest to you it is erroneous. But ultimately, when we begin to shift our understanding and our awareness, we begin to expand the possibilities of who and what we are, we can begin to recognize that there's something beyond this concept of I, beyond this concept of me. See, ultimately, what we think of as me is a belief system. You realize that? You have a belief system called me. And it's simply a belief system. And if your belief system says, me, I am this, and I am that, you are actually painting a picture with your belief system. But that picture may be very, very limited in being able to capture the wholeness of you or me or I. One of the things she presents here is so powerful is she presents the work of Orland Bishop, who is teaching members of rival gangs in Los Angeles to begin to work together by changing their perceptions and their perspective on what a relationship is and what it's for. And he's finding some amazing breakthroughs in creating community and common humanity. And one of the ways that he does it is helping them to shift their perceptions of themselves and each other and the world, and learning to share more deeply from a heart center space. He's been having some great breakthroughs. And one of the things he did is he brought back from Africa an idea or an understanding of a term that's literally, the term is Ubuntu. How many of you ever heard that term, Ubuntu? Some of you probably have. Well, literally it means, I am because you are. Ubuntu. I am because you are. And it is a recognition that we are co-creators with the one creative power and energy of the universe. And Ubuntu is a recognition that right now, in this moment, I am creating you. And you are creating me. I am creating you, and you are creating me. We are creating each other. Well, the interesting thing about that is, and it's an important understanding and recognition is, you see, I am creating you in my image and after my likeness. Do you realize that? And you are creating me after your image and after your likeness. And what I mean by that is, we are creating each other based upon our own energies and thoughts and belief system and consciousness. We're creating our experience of each other based upon our own past experiences and our belief systems about those experiences and our projections into the future of those experiences. And so it's so important for us to really begin to understand that process, that we're in that process, that we're in the process of creating each other. And really make decisions about who and how we are going to create ourselves and each other in this life and in this world. If there's something that goes on in our connection with each other that you don't like about me, I'm going to say something that some of you will or will not like, but you created me this way. I hate when that happens, yes. And if there's something that's going on in me that I don't necessarily like about you, guess what? I created you that way. We are creating each other continually, and we're participating in that process of creation, and that process is so much bigger than the belief system of me and you. It is so much greater and so much more valuable for that matter, and it's so much more ultimately of empowering with and for each other to recognize that we are in the process of participating in this way. Bishop goes on to really teach this understanding that a term called indaba, which loosely is translated as deep talk. Deep talk. To me, it really is talking about getting down to the essence of our nature, really getting down to who and what we truly are, and really talking on a level where we are recognizing this process and connecting in that process in an aware and conscious way. Deep talk. I'm really excited about the Be Peace process because I see that as a really practical and honest way of getting into what we call deep talk. And it really has to do with listening for and looking for and seeing underneath all of our verbiage and all of our belief systems and all of our actings in different ways, that ultimately everything that we are doing is ultimately to try and meet what we perceive as a need within ourselves. It's to really fulfill what we believe to be something that's missing in our life, that we think there's a need there that's not being filled, and there's a way of communicating in ways that we can more effectively recognize, one, what is the need that we're coming from, and at the same time be able to listen to those in our life and world for the needs that they are trying to express. Course in Miracles breaks it down very, very, very simply. There's only love or a cry for love. And every communication, every participation, every action that goes on in our life ultimately is a reflection of one of those two things. And we're being asked to show up in such a way that we can look beyond the belief systems of me to see a larger understanding and experience a larger awareness of who and what we truly are. Another term that Orland Bishop brought into this process that he uses in the work, it's called Sa'ubono, which is a Zulu term. Sa'ubono. And literally what it actually means is, and many of you will recognize this phrase from a very popular movie that came out just a few years back. The word Sa'ubono means, I see you. It was made popular in the movie Avatar. How many of you saw the movie Avatar? You remember that? A very poignant moments actually in that movie where it is stated, I see you. Well, what he says is that's not absolutely an accurate translation. A more accurate translation is, we see you. We see you. And the reply is, and we see you. And there's a different understanding and awareness rather than I see you. It is really recognizing that we, the collective we, the universal we, the unlimited we, see the I of you. And so it is this amazing understanding of a collective consciousness that we are all participating in and all a part of, that is recognizing and honoring even, yes, you as you are showing up in this individual nature as a part of that oneness, as a part of the we, as a part of that connection. And it is a different way of seeing. It's a different way of looking. It's a different way of understanding. And it's a different way of connecting not only with ourselves, but connecting in our world in a way that makes things different and yet connected. It recognizes the differences, but doesn't use those differences as a way of separating us. It recognizes the value and the beauty of our absolute uniqueness, just like everybody else, right? It's a different consciousness. And it's a consciousness that really has begun to really make a difference in Oakland, California, and many other communities. She gives a wonderful story also of a pro-life and a pro-choice activist in Cambridge, Massachusetts. In chapter 10 of the book, she offers this powerful illustration of this wonderful group. Interestingly enough, they wind up having a group of pro-life and pro-choice advocates who actually met together, and they had to meet in secret, basically, because they were afraid of all the things that were going to go on if they... And they were able to have these conversations, and some deep conversations, over a period of months. And at the end of this, they wound up becoming very good friends. And one of the things that they pointed out was, a reporter was interviewing them, and the reporter asked, well, did they change your views? Oh, no, absolutely not. We still hold those same views. And yet, we are the closest of friends. It really does show the understanding, the possibility that we can look at things from two different sides of the elephant and still have a connection with each other. Well, I came across a wonderful book, and I remember reading this some time ago, and it was really very powerful, and it really speaks to me. And Bob Doppel wrote a wonderful book called Me to We. And he talked about how 5 commitments that we can make to begin to shift our understanding and our awareness and our experience in our life and world, and to begin to do things in ways that actually help to enhance the life of our connection, and also enhance our planet and our own individual lives. I'm going to just quickly run through these 5 things, because they're really, it's really kind of, the way he puts them is interesting, but it also is very profound in terms of the spiritual principles involved in them. One of the first things is to begin to see the system that you are a part of. If we will begin to see ourselves more as a part of a system, and a system meaning a integrated organism, you might say, we begin to see ourselves as a part of a larger being, rather than just simply our own individual I, me, and mine, we'll make different decisions, won't we? We'll choose in different ways. As we begin to practice seeing ourselves from a larger perspective, we begin to see things in different ways, and we make choices that really affect more positive ways all of what's going on around us. The second thing, a commitment that he recommends and encourages, is that we be accountable for all the consequences of our actions. I'm going to take that a little further and say, I think it's important for us to begin to recognize and be willing to be accountable for all the consequences of our creative process, of what we are creating in our life and in our world. Getting back to that example I gave earlier, we are creating each other in this. And if there's something going on out here that we're not happy about, it's important for us to begin to accept responsibility that we're in the process of creating that. Dr. Hyok Hu Lin, the developer of, well, it's a form of Ho'oponopono. How many are familiar with that? Ho'oponopono. It's an amazing, wonderful process. But one of the things, Julie and I had a chance to take a training with him. And one of the key principles in this is really hard oftentimes for us to grasp and to understand. But if something shows up in our life, it's there because we have attracted it. And it's there for the purpose of us healing it. If there's something that shows up in our life, even on a grander scale, if there's something that comes into our awareness, it's there because our consciousness brought it into our awareness for the purpose of transformation and healing. And it's a very simple process. It's not easy, but it's a simple process. And the process is this. He calls it cleaning. And cleaning is very simple, but not always easy. Cleaning is simply acknowledging, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for having participated in creating this. Please forgive me. It is a recognition and an asking of forgiveness, both from yourself and from the universe. Thank you. Thank you? I want to thank you for that. Thank you. Thank you for showing up here in my life and for what you are bringing into my awareness that needs to be healed. And I love you. I love you. And the I that loves is much bigger than the me that separates. So our work really is to tune ourselves into a higher level of consciousness and be accountable for what we are participating in and creating. 3, abide in a society's deeply held universal principles. There are universal principles of love, of compassion, of understanding, and abiding in those. And our rules in our society, believe it or not, are created to further those. And then 4, acknowledge that we have an obligation. We are trustees, and to take responsibility for a continuation of all life on this planet and in this universe. And then number 5, to choose our own destiny, to recognize that we have a choice in how we're going to show up in life and how we're going to be a part of that creative process. A big part of our work is to move from an individualized connection and consciousness to a recognition that we are a we, always. Whether we like it or not, we're always a we. And so I'm going to invite you this week to spend some time really reflecting on our homework for this week and probably for many years to come is to really begin to shift our energy and to exercise a greater understanding of the we that we are in this world. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is not impossible. It's very possible. It's very doable. And it is happening in many, many places and many ways in our life and world. So that's our work for the week. Let's move into our meditation time. As we move into that peaceful place, as we move into an awareness and an acceptance and a willingness to move into that peaceful place. Our meditation today is an adaptation of a wonderful writing called Anyway. I am sometimes unreasonable, illogical, and self-centered. But I will love us anyway. we do good, others will accuse us of selfishness and ulterior motives. We will do good anyway. If we are successful, we will win false friends and true enemies. And we will succeed anyway. The good we do today will be forgotten tomorrow. And we will do good anyway. The biggest people with the biggest ideas can be shot down by the smallest people with the smallest minds. We will think big anyway. We often favor underdogs, but we follow top dogs. And we will fight for the underdog anyway. What we spend years building may be destroyed overnight. And we will build anyway. People really need help, but may attack us if we help them. We will help people anyway. If we give the world the best we've got in us, we'll get kicked in the teeth. Give the world our best anyway. Because we know we give to we. Take a nice deep breath. Let your awareness be in this room, in this place, in this understanding, in this awareness of the me that is we. And so it is. Take another nice deep breath. Let your eyes come open. And give thanks for that we.